morning. Hopefully, people who and our adjuncts professors can also learn something about this group discussion. So to give you everyone a little bit of background, how we came to this topic, after the first PDD, our VPI and PDD committee sent out a survey for the faculty to get your opinions and suggestions for the second PDD today. So the survey allowed us to get your voice on how to improve the PDD professional development portion. So the survey had a couple of professional development topics that faculty could vote. And this topic, online synchronous, got the highest, if not one of the highest votes. So that's how we chose this topic. Even though we have well-experienced colleagues today to share their thoughts, Lacy and Himika with me today to share their experience, we would like this to be a discussion-based talk where everyone is welcome to share their thoughts, ideas, and ask questions. So please feel free to join us. This is not going to be like complete that the panelists going to talk. It's going to be an interactive one as it would like to be. I know there are so many issues around online synchronous classes, scheduling, and students getting to know about this, but there's an increasing demand for the online synchronous classes. Not only they are a great option for a pandemic situation where some students need that interaction with the instructor one-on-one in a classroom session, but we can't do that. So through online, those students can get the help and complete their courses and during this pandemic situation. And as for instructors, right, to meet this challenging time, many of you roll your sleeves and jump to the job like you always do, maybe even without previous experience with the online synchronous teaching. So while we are thankful for those who do that, we would like to know from you guys and share your thoughts so that we can improve all together. So that's the purpose behind to learn from colleagues that nurture that environment, peer-based learning, as we would like to learn more and more every day. And also I hear from deans that our institutions will look into these kind of classes in future. So it's good to know about right from the faculty that who did these classes. So this is going to be a great opportunity. And thank you, Lacy and Himika, for volunteering to share your thoughts. So I want to share a PowerPoint presentation. So let me share my screen. We have a made a couple of slides, nothing much. So let me. I'm gonna go to share content. Do you guys see the PowerPoint slides? Give me a thumbs up. Thank you. So, so let's spend this next 45 minutes sharing what worked and what didn't work, and any suggestions we have for future. Those who likes to follow this method or thinking about it but don't know much information about it. So This is our plan for today. We will spend the first 30 minutes discussing 3 subtopics: student engagement, instructor reflections, and courses with labs, and how to handle that. And after that, we'll have a concluding remark coming back for a 15 minutes discussion again. I think Himika is planning to create 3 breakout sessions where you can openly discuss your ideas. And we're going to come back to this main meeting again. And Lacy has planned an activity.
Thank you, Asitha. So as he mentioned, we have a structure that we kind of pre-scheduled for today, but we really do want this to be about what you all want to discuss and go in that direction. So to kind of get the conversation started, we'd like you to, we've brainstormed some topics, and we'd like you to rank those topics in order of what you most want to talk about today. So I put in the chat Menti code, and I'm also going to share screen so that you all can see the Mentimeter, and you can see how the results play out as far as what you want to talk about most, and we'll start the conversation from there. Asitha, can you guys see the Menti screen?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so you should be able to rank these 4 choices. First, second, third, fourth. You don't have to actually vote on all of them, but vote on at least a couple. And if you do choose that you want to talk about something other than student engagement, instructor reflections, and courses with labs, you can choose that choice for other, and then specify in our WebEx chat what are some of those topics that you want to discuss that aren't covered on the screen that you see in front of you. So if everybody will use your phones and complete the Menti for us. Thank you. Got responses starting to roll in. We have about 7 responses so far, with obviously student engagement being the lead. We'll give it another minute or 2 to have everybody submit their choices. Thanks, everyone. We have probably about half of our attendees have submitted a choice. We'll give another little bit to get a few more selections in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So far, it's looking like student engagement is where we might want to jumpstart the conversation. We've got about 17 of you, so it's looking good. If anybody's having trouble accessing the Menti, you can let us know, or you can also drop it into the chat if you need to, if that's easier for you. Okay, I think we've got a good number of results so far. So I think that's probably, if you guys are ready, we can go ahead and start chatting about student engagement. That's where we can start the conversation today. Those of you who did select other, make sure you drop those topics into the chat so we can cover those too. I'm going to try to come on video. I was having some network issues earlier this morning, so hopefully you can all hear me okay. Can I get some thumbs up if you can hear me all right now that my video is running? Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, so I am facilitating the section about student engagement. So I'll start just by sharing kind of my biggest takeaway in my experience from transitioning from my first OS class to my second OS class as far as student engagement goes. And I'm only going to really share that one experience because then I want to open up the floor to the rest of you who all may want to share some student engagement strategies that you've picked up on since taking on OS. So I think the biggest difference maker for me from my fall OS to my spring OS was the way I structured my course. So with the first OS, I had no idea, like the rest of you, what I was doing, really just kind of, making it up as I went. And so I structured that course to be mainly a lecture. That was their lecture for the week. And then that lecture would have some built-in engagement activities, discussions, and things like that. And so it worked. I had most of my students consistently attended, but I wouldn't say that the engagement is what I wanted it to be, especially for future educators, right? I'm having this OS class in the middle of this pandemic when their future careers, right? The teachers are doing that right then and there, having to pivot to online instruction and synchronous instruction. And so I wanted them to see how it could work and how it could still be engaging. And I was having to like pull teeth to have discussions over these topics. And so I really started thinking about how can I adjust my structure for the next OS class. And so what I did was I decided I was going to have to take control and give it to the students, right? And so I was starting, what do you want the most out of this course? And so I said, do you want this to be mainly just an hour's worth of a lecture? Do you want it to be a lecture with a few built-in discussions? Or do you want it to be no lecture at all and just be activities? Yes?
I think it's a good idea to, if you can, turn off your camera because there's a couple of seconds we lost you. Thank you.
Thank you, Asitha. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Thank you. So I was saying that I gave them the 3 options on how to structure the course. And I really thought, the power of student choice would hopefully help me increase student engagement. And so out of the options of lecture only, lecture with some discussion, and then no lecture at all activities based around the content, the overwhelming majority of my students said they didn't want any lecture in that time whatsoever. They just wanted activities built around the content that would help them process it, engage with it, and talk to their classmates about it. And so that's what I've been doing all spring semester, and it really has upped my level of engagement. And so I'll share just a few of the strategies that I use to fill that time with different activities, and then I want the rest of you all to be able to kind of share as well. So on the technology side, I think the biggest tool, right, as far as getting student to student engagement, because I think that's the piece you lose the most in this environment, would be the use of breakout rooms, right? And we'll be using those with you in a little bit. And then as far as engagement with students to the content tools like Mentimeter, what you just saw, the flippity.net, if you haven't heard of that one, that's a pretty good one. If anybody's interested, you can reach out and I can share some more about that. Of course, Nearpod is a really good engagement tool. And then I've used simulations, I've used guest speakers, I've used case studies, all in the online synchronous environment. And so that's kind of now how we fill up our time. We don't do any lecture at all in that class. And so giving the students the choice I found really worked. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to invite you all, anybody who has an engagement tip or a question about engagement, to jump in here.
Hi, this is Rachel. Just something I teach math and I've taught it in an OS environment. And long story short, at the beginning of the semester, first time I taught it, I realized that students were logging in on their phone. They were multitasking. They were driving to some, whether to campus or something like that. So I put it out there at the very beginning, this is a classroom environment. And so setting the expectations of they need to have a working webcam, because I want to see, and their classmates want to see the nonverbal that's going on as well, and to treat it like it's a classroom. Don't be doing it in your pajamas, laying in bed or in your car. So I just think it's important to lay out the expectations of what you want and what you expect the students to do before you even get started.
That is
great, Rachel. Yeah.
Rachel, thank you. This is Gloria, everybody. How are you?
Hi,
I did a class last fall, and my biggest struggle was getting them to turn on their camera. And I think that was crucial to get that engagement piece of see each other, talk to each other. Without the cameras, they were just really quiet. They would participate in the chat. They would participate if I did some kind of, application activity on their phone, but I had a really hard time getting them to talk.
Yes, just I think like having that communication prior. I heard from the other teachers that they somehow had to communicate early in the semester that these are the expectations, so that students are also getting ready for this. This is a new concept for them. Sometimes they don't even know when they register for these classes that they have to have this camera on. They are sometimes surprised, as I hear from other instructors. So thank you for sharing that. I think with any other online class, the communication play an important role here as well. So thank you for sharing. Any other thoughts?
I just wanted to say I really appreciate what Rachel said about setting up those expectations at the very beginning, especially about joining on a computer with a webcam versus the phone. Because if you do want that engagement to happen, I am not aware, and some of you may know this and you can teach me, that you can assign a student to a breakout session for that interaction if they're on the phone. I could never make that work because I had a student call in a couple of times and then they were just left sitting in the main room. And I felt like I needed to stay in the main room and have a conversation with them about the content, when what I really wanted to do was check on the three groups who had, collaboration going. And so the importance of the computer versus the phone, I think, is a big one.
So what about attendance? Are you guys mandating that they are there, or do they have to listen to a recorded session? I'm just curious because I know the system office has stressed the importance of us being flexible with the students. So I'm just curious what you guys are doing.
I was going to touch on that, Diana. So in just a minute, we'll move on to that, but I promise I'll cover that.
Okay, thank you.
This is Laura Dupree, and I would just like to share, I also appreciate what Rachel had said. I do teach for my synchronous classes, it's the life path students. So in that first semester, we were super flexible because a lot of them didn't even have the computers. I think we all did the same, not just life path. But it became very clear quickly that they would show up having just woken up and trying to eat breakfast, if they even had a camera on or in their pajamas. And so as we were walking through things and I was explaining to them that this would be really a class as if we were face-to-face, and there's some flexibility for right now, but we're going to get to a point where these are the expectations. And so the same students I had last semester, I have this semester, and it's been interesting, not just for them to see their engagement, but for me. I can tell you, I believe I feel like I connect better with students, and it's more emotionally engaging when I'm able to see them. So I appreciate the fact of setting those standards up from the beginning. And I think we'll need to continue doing that as we continue to have this opportunity to teach that way. The other things that, and I love the things that Lacy has shared. I have used things like having them interview one another and then coming back and sharing group activities. I cannot get them to break out if they're on their cell phone, by the way. And I have a student that, because of where she lives, she has to drive somewhere else and be on her phone to be able to access the course. So I've had to be very flexible with that. We also do creations of presentations. So if we're discussing a topic, they know up front that this is what we're going to be talking about. They have the content, then they'll break out and create the presentation, and they provide, quote unquote, a lecture with me guiding them through it. And then the other thing is that we do a lot of self-reflection and then share out, like if someone reflects on how they're doing in the class or the topic, then their peers provide feedback to them. I think I could do the same thing in any other course, not just LifePath, in terms of that last one as well.
Thank you for sharing, everyone. Does anyone else have anything they want to add to the discussion about student engagement, whether it's an idea, a question, before we move on to some other topics like attendance and things like that?
This is Rebecca Williams. I'm math as well. I guess my question, because I'll be doing my first online synchronous class this coming fall, I guess my question is, if you teach in a content area that just naturally isn't as discussion based, like math or the sciences, what sort of activities do you recommend doing? Because my idea was to, ideally avoid just straight lecture, because number one, I'm not going to be able to get all of the lecture I would need done during a week in one session during the week. So what sort of things might anyone recommend for a content area like math, in terms of making it a little bit more interesting, making it a little bit more engaging, and I guess just making the time meaningful for everyone? So any thoughts I would appreciate from anyone.
That's a really good question. So any of our math and science faculty, please jump on and share.
I think Asitha had a good app, Lacy, that he's going to cover, using the iPad to draw.
Okay, yeah, we'll share that when we move on to our instructor reflections. Are there any other math and science faculty that have a suggestion for that, that question before we move on?
I actually have not done online synchronous, but I had hosted, I teach pharmacy math, by the way, pharmacy math 1 and 2. And so I do have worksheets that I would send the students ahead of time, and then I would offer like a tutorial, and I would work through the problems, and then I would record it and then post it in D2L for students who were not able to attend. And I was really surprised how many students did start to attend and listen and follow along, and how many actually did work out the calculations ahead of time.
Gotcha. That was kind of my thought for how to do it, rather than introducing new topics, doing it as an extra practice session. So that's nice to hear that someone tried that and that seemed to work well, because that had kind of been my thought in terms of what to do. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Rebecca?
I think that question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rachel. I think that's Rachel.
One thing I've done is to run it more like a flipped classroom, because I know you've got lectures recorded as well. And so, on their time, they can watch the actual lecture, but use the classroom more as a flipped classroom when you're meeting online with them. And so whether that entails, throwing up problems from a PowerPoint, or just, grabbing and showing them from whatever problem set, and then asking them to explain it verbally if they don't have the means to share the screen with you, just to walk you through it verbally. And so you can go around and actually check to make sure that each student is following.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was doing as well, Rachel. I have it's pre-recorded, all the lectures and the PowerPoints, and I have sample problems. And so then after that, I would say, okay, well, I'm going to be online live at this time, and I'd give them a WebEx time. And if people wanted to come in, they did, and we would just work on the other worksheets and things like that. So it seemed to work out pretty well. But as far as actual activities, I really don't have any suggestions other than giving real life application examples. But I think for me, it's really easy because it's pharmacy. So it's very easy to pull examples and the types of problems they may encounter.
So thank
Rebecca,
you,
one last,
everybody.
sorry,
Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say one last comment about it. You've got to remember that math and some of the sciences too are very procedural based. And so spending the time when you're actually in front of the student synchronously, walking through step by step how to solve problems. That's what my students have appreciated more than anything, because they can, stop, watch, rewind, play, all they want. But if they have an immediate question that they, how did you get that step? They appreciate having the live not one-on-one, but they appreciate the faculty member being there live.
So they do stay engaged and they do actually enjoy just working extra problems. You feel like you've gotten good results from that?
I do, and I always keep up too. I have a dual monitor, so I keep all the students up on one monitor. So I'm watching them, and all they have to do is literally raise their hand or just gesture, and it's just like I'm sitting in a classroom talking to them.
How many, how large of a problem set would you recommend doing? Because I know for mine, it's going to be a 1 day a week, and it's like an hour and 20-minute session, something like that. So
it depends on how many sections that you're covering that week.
Gotcha.
I usually try to do at least 3 to 5 per section.
Mm-hmm.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Thank you all for your responses. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone, I think that means we can just about move on to our instructor reflection slide, which is going to talk a little bit about some of those other questions some of you brought up about attendance and things like that. So we'll go ahead and move on. We appreciate you all sharing your thoughts about engagement, and we'll try to have those breakout sessions at the end. So if there's other questions you have for each other, you'll be able to kind of communicate in those smaller groups. So we'll move on, but I think one of the biggest takeaways is that flexibility that you guys talked about of like a flipped classroom. So just finding the structure that works for your discipline and your students. So thank you for being with us today, and we're going to move on to our next topic.
So I would like to invite Himika. She taught microbiology OS this last semester, to share some of her reflections on what worked, what didn't work, and what might be something could be improved in the future. So Himika.
Thank you, Asitha. Good morning, everyone. So, like everyone, I think we're still learning, and I'm not an expert, but I'd like to share what I learned. So in the last year, like most of you, I had to transition from teaching face-to-face to going fully online in summer to OS in fall. So it has been a learning curve, and I'm still learning. But I have taught all three modalities, and I know there is a little difference between each. How I would teach is very different in a face-to-face versus an OS. So I listed a couple of things, and the number one thing that I had to get used to is knowing that my students are listening, but I have an invisible audience, as I said. So you have students who are listening, but unlike a face-to-face, you're talking to a screen. And for me, the hardest part was not seeing their reactions. I was so used to looking around a classroom to figure out if I make sense, if I need more time with the topic, or do my students need help? I could always see if there's a blank face, I need more time with the topic. So for me, that invisible audience, it took me a while to get used to that. So one of the biggest changes with OS was knowing that your students are listening to you, but not being able to really tell if they want you to slow down or go over something one more time. So the next point I've put up there is nonverbal feedback. And so I realized that I could still gauge their reactions, but now their faces are replaced with thumbs up or thumbs down or a raised hand or a smiley face. And so I quickly learned to prompt them to start using these reactions. So now, even though I am teaching and I could not see every student, and I still have I still struggle with forcing all of them to turn their cameras on. So there'll always be a couple who will have connection issues or something like that. So I always rely on the emojis or the thumbs up, the thumbs down, and I had to force them to do that. So this for me was hard. So what I do is when I start a class right away, I start asking questions where they had to show me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So I prompt them to get started. Are you having a good day? Or something like, are you ready for the test this weekend? And I immediately get a thumbs down or a thumbs up. So I learned that I have to ask a yes and no questions to try to get them more involved. So that was one of the things I had to force them to use these non-verbal feedback so I knew how I was doing. One of the things that I struggled with was attendance. Teaching OS, I had to take attendance, and to do justice, I wanted to be fair. I think many of us have students who will log on and disappear. Then there'll be some students at the end of the meeting who are not responding to your questions. So they've just left their phones on or computers on. And that made me realize that they do log in, but that does not mean they are attentive. And so I had to be smart about this. So instead of having the argument of, I need to see you, or, go back and forth with, I don't think you're paying attention, I chose to do something different. What I did and what worked for me is I would teach, and after about 15 minutes to 45 minutes, somewhere in between, I would pause. It's not a fixed time, so they had to pay attention. And I would give them a password to open a quiz in D2L. And it was a timed quiz. It would close in 15 minutes. So they had to be there to listen to the password. They had to be there to finish the quiz with me. So I was kind of tricking them to pay attention. I was kind of tricking them so they knew they had to be there. So that's something I did. So I found it useless trying to tell them to turn the cameras on, to answer something, not getting a feedback. So this is what I tried. And so my attendance was always connected to this quiz. And if they did not finish the quiz, let's say they have some Wi-Fi problems, I would say, contact me. Email me immediately and I'll give you an extension on the time. But you have to attend my class Thursday between 9 to 12 to be able to finish this assignment with me. So I created a lot of these assignments, and they would only open on the days I was scheduled to teach. And it would be a small thing, just like sometimes 5 points or 10 points. And it was always open only while I was teaching. And they would only do well on the quiz if they were listening to me. So I would go over those topics, I would explain, do justice to it. And then, so my students very soon realized that they had to listen to me because what I was teaching would help them do better on the quiz. And the only way they could take the quiz was to attend. So that was a trick I used. And it was just, I was just trying to outsmart them. I mean, I tried different ways, and I just felt this was the easiest for me. So I'm not sure if you want to try this, if this will work for you, but in terms of attendance, I tried different things. I asked them to log in. I took the attendance, which WebEx does that for you. When your students log in, you can get an automated report that tells you these were the students that attended. So in case you're not aware, when you have a meeting, WebEx meeting, there is a little report that is created that tells you who joined at what time. And so you could kind of do your attendance from there. But for me, it was more important to have them attentive than be attending. So for me, that's the one thing that I did. The active learning, I realized very soon I had to devote more time to active learning. I have recorded
Himika,
lectures. Yes.
just to, I think you made so many important points. I thought maybe we can ask others who had any other new techniques to like keep the students in the class. I think that's a
Yes.
great point everyone is facing. So hearing out others might have to add, this is a good time, I guess, before I know you have more important stuff. I don't want to
No,
like
no,
forget
this is a
about that.
discussion. Yes. Did any one of you have a better way to handle this? If you can
Ese
share.
fue el enlace que mandaron, empezaba a las 11. Rarísimo esto.
I think somebody was unmute. There we go. Okay. Does anybody want to share any ideas that they have about attendance or any of the other ideas about your reflections, whether it has to do with attendance or not, in, you know, teaching it once and teaching it again and kind of learning and maneuvering?
I'm still very curious on how you guys are handling attendance. In the pharmacy tech program, we have problems where I have all the I'm teaching all the classes online, and my lab is hybrid, and I've had a number of students who are not able to attend lab because they've had a COVID exposure or something related to COVID, or their children have symptoms of COVID and they can't go to school. And so there was just all these issues. And so I guess for me, in my mind, I thought I'm not going to do online, you know, synchronous, because it just seems like it's going to create a bigger issue with attendance. So I'm just real curious how you guys are handling that.
That's a good question. While some of you guys are gathering your thoughts, I think it goes back to what Rachel said at the very beginning. What is the expectation for attendance in an OS class specifically for you? And are those expectations very clearly stated in the syllabus, right? Are you taking attendance each session? Are the cameras required to be on? Is it required to be a computer versus a phone? Is the attendance tied to a grade? Is it a portion of the grade? Is it not? I think figuring out all of those things for your discipline and your course up front and setting those expectations in the syllabus and saying those in the very first session are going to really come into play there. But is there anybody who's doing attendance in a certain way that they might want to share with us?
Well, just to add one thing, those are the expectations. It's always been for both face-to-face as well as in my lab. But when you're being faced with students who are having issues with COVID, you know, the feedback that we get from system office is that we're having to be flexible with these students. Even though a student had been tested for COVID and it came back negative, my students were still not allowed to come to lab for until 14 weeks from their exposure. Therefore, they're missing a lot of lab content, and then we're having to make up the labs. So in my mind, I'm thinking this could be the same issue even online, even though that is the expectation, because in our healthcare programs, they are required to attend 100% of our labs. If they miss something, you know, it has to be made up. So I'm just curious.
I think your situation is a little bit unique because of the discipline that you're teaching, but I know with mine, with math again, that you know, even when you're doing traditional face-to-face, you're going to have students that attend that aren't really mentally there, and you're going to have the same situation in your OS class. And so, like it was just stated, you've got to put it up front in your syllabus what your expectations are. If you're going to, you know, do a participation per se grade, you need to clearly define how they get those participation points. You know, is it just logging in, or is it, you know, anyway, I think it's unique to each discipline, each class, but again, state it in your syllabus what your expectations are.
So maybe we can get to breakout sessions pretty quickly, and you guys can maybe get and have some of those more specific discussions. I think Asitha had something he wanted to show, a tool that he wanted to show really quickly that I think is really good for math and science faculty for sure. And I'm sure some of the rest of us could use it as well. So Asitha, did you want to share about that?
Thank you, Lacy. Yeah, I know a lot of great informations are, these discussions are really important to have. I just wanted to share what I learned from a chemistry faculty. I think Rebecca and Rachel echoed the same concern that some disciplines require that interactiveness and having that one-to-one problem solving or visual aids. So I learned this a technology from a chemistry faculty that she used during the online synchronous class, and I thought it's great. So let me share the screen with you. This, maybe you have heard of this before. This is called a dossary. I know there are tons of new softwares out there because of the demand. These are screen share technologies. So I'm trying to see, share that screen with you. Hold on. Do you see, I'm the presenter, right? So share. For some reason it doesn't show up. So it's something like Microsoft OneNote. Do you see Microsoft OneNote here? It's a blank note page where you can draw things like maybe like if a chemistry faculty wants to draw the chemical images like methane, how to draw that out to explain to the students. There are styluses to make these drawings very clear for math instructors if you want to work out problems with the students. Just there are tools out there. This is Microsoft OneNote. The college has the access. I'm sure if you go to WebEx and tools, this is already in place there for workout questions, and students get to, you can share these notes at the end of the class with the students because they are saved. I heard good comments about this. So I haven't used this in my online class, but the other software that I was trying to call Dossary, it's doing the same thing. So I thought to share with you guys, there are tons of new technology developing out there for supporting this online synchronous modality. So what I was going to raise that was, if you have some ideas to suggest for COTE, we would like to hear that. We would like to find someone to arrange these workshops, how to learn, get together and learn software supporting screen share technology that allow you to interact with students. So please let us know. That's why we are here. So COTE wanted me to pass that information to you so that we can hear your questions. So please email me anytime if you would like to have a session on technology. We can find what we can do. Thank you. I think since we are running out of time, I would like to pass this session to Himika. I think she's creating some breakout sessions for us to openly discuss ideas. Himika, for you.
Welcome back, everybody. We've posted an exit ticket question for you in the chat. If some of you want to just start typing in some of your responses so we can see that. What's something new you might be able to try in your next OS class after today's session? And then we'll wrap up the last couple of minutes. Himika, if you want to have everyone share.
Well, while they're sharing, Lacy, I'm going to share with you the same thing I shared or share with the large group. Just so that everyone knows, the Instructional Council has been working on an OS document of best practices, so to speak, for faculty, so that they can sort of have an idea on what the expectations are. Again, it's not something in stone that you absolutely have to do, but it does have some best practices in there. And we're also going to have a document to give to the students and the advisors so that they can see, is this the right format? Is this the right modality for the student? We think that's going to help students understand it better and then maybe choose the right class that fits their style. So I just wanted you guys to know they should be out early next, well, probably by the end of next week.
Okay. So our final plan was to bring everyone to the main room and have any other concerns that you want to bring up. Thank you, Mindy, for adding that information. I think we had a good session. I don't think it's enough. We can talk more in the future. Like I said, if you want to know some technology aspects that COTE can help with, I typed my email there as well to reach out for technology sessions. Anyone wants to add any final thoughts?
So I just noticed some things in the chat, some people wanting to use a different system, maybe instead of WebEx, such as Teams, the idea of using that sneaky quiz that Himika kind of talked about and the tool of quizzes. That's another good one. So we do have some people entering some new things that they want to try, which is always kind of the goal, right? Taking one new thing away. So thank you everyone for participating today.
Thank you, Lacy, Asitha, and Himika. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.